this project, you're going to want to start off with a few scraps of fabric that are around the same length and the same height. You can use 4 or 5 for this, and then you're going to want to sew them together, like we can see here, just into a long strip, and then you'll want to trim the sides just so that they're pretty even and uniform, and so that the shape is pretty much just a rectangle. To get a reinforced seam, what you're basically just going to want to do is sew 2 pieces together. You can trim them afterwards. And then basically just sew along the seam on top so that you're sewing the outside of the fabric onto the inner part of the seam. That way you'll end up with a reinforced seam that's a lot stronger. For the lining of the bag, you can also use a similar patching technique, or you can use a scrap piece of fabric that's larger. In this case, I'm using a scrap piece of polyester I had from another project. Once you have both those cut out, you're going to want to cut a zipper to length. You can really use a zipper of any length. All you have to do is cut it and then sew back the end, which I'll show a little bit later. When sewing on the zipper, we have to keep in mind that we have to sew it to not only the outer fabric, but also the lining fabric. We're going to start by sewing along one seam on the outer fabric, by first pinning it and then just sewing it on normally using our zipper foot. Afterwards, we're going to want to sew on our lining fabric on this same side. Pretty much just sew it on the exact same side, in the same direction, but just on the opposite side of the zipper so that it covers the inner area. You can pin it on and sew it on in the exact same way, just on the opposite side. Once you have both the lining and the outer fabric sewn onto this one side, you're going to want to reinforce the seam just like we reinforced the other seams before. This just makes the fabric look a little flatter and a little nicer. Just as with the other side of the fabric, how we sewn on the outer fabric and then the lining fabric, we're going to do the same with the other side of the zipper. Just make sure, as before, that the good side or outer part of the zipper is also touching the outer part of the fabric when you're sewing it on. Once you've completed both sides, turn the bag inside out and give it a little bit of a press so that it's flat. Once you've picked a nice shape for your bag, pin the sides and sew it along. Afterwards, you can cut off the excess threads and side stitch just so it looks a little more finished. Now that we've done the one side, we're going to do the other side. At this point, make sure you unzip the zipper so you can turn the bag inside out afterwards once you're done both sides. Now that the bag's done, we can turn it inside out and poke the corners out so they look a little sharper with something sharp like a pair of scissors or a pencil or a ruler. And now our recycled fabric, little pencil case or case for anything is done. This is a pretty good introduction to sewing on linings as well as zippers, making it a great beginner project.